Welcome to California in Focus. I'm Keegan Kernodle, and joining me as always is our California reporter, Kenneth Schrupp. Now, Kenneth wrote a story about a bill a while back that was freeing up land in the Palisades fire. And we talked about this last week. There was backlash to this bill, and we have a story now on that. Can you tell us more about this, Kenneth?
Hey, Keegan. Yes. So last week we did talk about SB 549, this bill that would have created something called a Resilient Rebuilding Authority for the LA fires. This Resilient Rebuilding Authority, I mean, per the bill author's words, would have really controlled every part of the rebuilding process. It would have bought lots, bought construction equipment and materials, hired workers, sold finished properties. It been in charge of financing, been the conduit for all state and local and even private and nonprofit funding regarding the rebuilding. And it all would have been under the LA County government. And this super agency is something that people were not happy about. Our story on this last week did get millions of impressions online. And really, soon after our coverage, the state senator who sponsored the bill put it on pause for the remainder of the year. He said he's coming back to it in 2026. This is what State Senator Ben Allen, who represents Santa Monica and the Palisades, said about this. I appreciate the input of the folks who have weighed in about the bill and along with legislative colleagues have decided that it would be best for us to pause the bill until next year to give us more time to see if we can get it right. So this is just a pause. It's, seems to be likely to come back in 2026. Something, that I do want to note is that, on my, personal X account, I did make a post, about this bill. And the state senator's team or the state senator's account was responding to others' comments on my post, trying to shift blame to the LA County Board of Supervisors and the Blue Ribbon Rebuilding Commission. He's really saying that he was just doing what the commission and the county supervisors had requested. This commission, which I am investigating further, is, largely composed of people who it seems like would benefit from the kind of spending and kind of governance that would be associated with these changes. Of course, I'm going to look into this further, but these recommendations could be expected by that group of people. There are a few things that seem to have caused some confusion about whether or not different parts of the ordinance would require low-income housing or not. The Resilient Rebuilding Authority, just to put it out there, would be authorized to buy lots for land banking, for open space. That means they could buy some people's houses and just leave it empty. Buy and sell construction materials and equipment, deploy subsidized financing, and replace affordable housing. While this Resilient Rebuilding Authority bill would not have actually changed any zoning laws, Los Angeles' own ordinance is what requires that all protected housing be replaced by low-income housing. There is something called Ordinance 188481, which requires that in higher opportunity areas, this is a state definition using the state map. High opportunity area includes all of the Palisades, all the nicer parts of LA. All protected housing, that is all apartments built before October 1978, anything that's protected by rent control, even though those units might be occupied by a high or moderate income family now, they must be replaced by deed restricted housing that is income restricted to people who are low income. So you would have a situation in which it's possible for people who were renting out these apartments. Again, all these apartments in the Palisades, almost all of them, they were rent protected technically, but the people who were renting them were higher income people. They would not be able to go back and live in that same building because it's gone from just merely rent protected to now being deed restricted affordable. So they wouldn't be able to go back. And that unfortunately is just what the ordinance says and does. There's no getting around that. It's not necessarily this resilient rebuilding authority that would have required it. Although there's another interesting section with the RRA, because Allen bundled it in with an existing bill he had. His staff rightly pointed out that the RRA was just added in at the last moment to another bill that would have created these other districts for tax increment financing. Tax increment financing is when you project future property tax increases from investing in certain projects, and you issue bonds against the expected revenue increase. So you can fund the projects that will fund the revenue increase. And those bonds would have been set aside for mostly, deed restricted affordable housing, including, 40% of that would have to be for low income housing and for public transit. And people did seem to conflate the two parts of the bill. When I first read it, that's what I saw as well. But those were two separate measures. It's unclear whether he's going to be reintroducing the measure as a separate piece of legislation, or if he's going to split these off. Another issue that voters did bring up, or citizens were concerned about, was that this was paired with the governor's announcement of $101 million in taxpayer funds for, quote, multifamily low-income housing development, as a rebuilding measure that will, quote, contribute to a more equitable and resilient Los Angeles. And, this $101 million has priority funding for areas within or immediately adjacent to burn areas. So there's concern that the state seems to be prioritizing funding for income restricted housing that a lot of people may not even be able to come back to, which, they have with the houses that they own that they can't afford to rebuild. They have too much in assets to be able to go into this deed restricted housing, but they don't have enough money to rebuild. So they're in a very difficult situation. And it seems very unfair for a lot of people who have, paid their taxes and been insured, only to find out that they're not getting help and that the insurance is not enough to cover the cost of rebuilding. So many people just have no chance to sell. A lot of people feared that they might have to sell to the Resilient Rebuilding Authority. There could be cascading sell-offs that result in all of people's lots values plummeting. A lot of bad things could happen, and it's unclear what's going to happen with the families that are in this position.
Well, thank you, Kenneth, for getting into this with us. Viewers and listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. And thanks for watching California in Focus.